you will know that it's got nothing to do with the gods. So exit the gods. Science explains and God disappears. Science and human reason now explain what God once explained. Stephen Hawking has recently become very clear on this issue where he was vague before, and he says that we must, as intelligent people, choose between science and God, because science now explains what God once explained. For instance, in the Greek world, they observed thunder and lightning. And they didn't like thunder and lightning because they thought it was evidence that the gods were angry. But of course, if you've done atmospheric physics at Hong Kong University, you will know that it's got nothing to do with the gods. It's to do with electrical discharges, static discharges in the atmosphere, and all this kind of thing. So exit the gods. Science explains and God disappears. Well, let's take, I see many Toyota cars here, but I'll have to use a Ford. You've heard of a Ford car, haven't you? So let's suppose there's one sitting there and you can all see its engine. And I say we're going to investigate this Ford engine, and I'm going to give you two explanations of it. Number one, the law of internal combustion and clever mechanical engineering. That's explanation one. Number two, Henry Ford. Please choose. And you say, don't be silly. Oh, Bob, that's exactly the mistake that many atheists are making. Now, you can see that explaining the Ford engine in terms of a law and a mechanism, and explaining it in terms of Henry Ford, those explanations do not conflict. They don't compete with each other. They complement each other because they're different kinds of explanation. The one is an explanation in terms of a law and a mechanism, scientific explanation, and the other is an explanation in terms of a personal agent. And to say that science and God are mutually exclusive is the same kind of nonsense. And Isaac Newton's a good example, isn't he? When he discovered his law of gravity, he didn't say, wonderful, I've got a law of gravity, I don't need God. No, he didn't. He wrote the most brilliant book in the history of mathematics, in which he said, I hope this book, Principia Mathematica, leads many people to believe in a deity. The more he understood of science, the more he believed in the genius of God who did it that way. And that's the way we work, isn't it? The more you understand of engineering, the more you can admire a bit of, well, it's now German engineering, a Rolls Royce. The more you understand of art, the more you can admire a Rembrandt, not the less. So the more I understand of God, the more I admire his genius in doing it that way. To claim that God is a creator, the creator of the universe, is an agent explanation. That doesn't stop us from doing the work of science. And now comes the thing that we forget. Where did modern science come from? Atheism? No. It arose in the 16th and 17th centuries in Europe from a Christian background. And philosophers and historians of science have mainly come to the conclusion that the two are closely connected. C.S. Lewis put it brilliantly when he said, men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not the least bit embarrassed or ashamed to tell you I'm a scientist and a Christian, because Christianity arguably gave me my subject. It's interesting, isn't it? It's the exact opposite of what Hawking and Dawkins are saying. They're saying belief in God hinders science, is a threat to science, will intellectually cripple you, and yet the great, brilliant luminaries of science, Galileo, Kepler, Newton, Clerk Maxwell, Charles Babbage, the father of computing, were all believers in God. It didn't hinder them. It was the motor that drove them. And that raises another interesting question. Why would you do science? Oh, but you say, science can be done. I believe it can be done. I've got a good brain. I've got a good mind. I can do it. Oh, so you have faith then, have you? Oh, yes. You wouldn't spend years trying to solve a mathematical equation, as some of my colleagues have brilliantly done, if you didn't believe it could be done.